Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. We're dealing with part something of 100 on this latest discussion thread online. And TG is back. TG, oh yeah, our favorite pseudonym. The Progressive Socialist Libertarian. Wow, piece of work. All right, the accusation this time is that the Republicans, the right, this wasn't actually Republican-Democrat, but it became that way, that the right is not inclusive and does not have the big tent currently, that the left is the party of tolerance and inclusivity, and the polls prove it. And I'm going to scream at TG, fake news, because he said the polls. He won't back that up. He didn't provide me with any polls. I had to go find some of my own polls. And the polls are not showing any disagreement with what I said. You know, the polls, there's a lot of polls out there. Pro-Trump, anti-Trump, does racism exist? Do you support Black Lives Matter? But none of them are you tolerant? But you can get some tolerance out of them if you start looking at the polls. And so, part number one, polls do not prove objective reality. Mr. TG, just so you know, polls do not and cannot prove anything about objective reality. They're opinion polls. Two, they're very limited. They're limited, first of all, to the people who will respond to the polls, which we have, if you've noticed recently in the polls, this is part of the tolerance thing, vast majority of people who are not on the far left feel that expressing their political opinions can hurt them, that it can hurt them socially, in their job, in their life. People are scared to express their honest political opinions unless they're on the far left progressive end of things. And it gets worse the further right you get. So if you are moderate right, a standard Western farmer, you are in a position where it is conceived, opinion polls, not objective reality, but it is perceived as very dangerous to publicly discuss your politics in a normal setting. Like if you go to a bar with a bunch of other ranchers, you probably are safe to do that. But think about this. Think this one through. All right, party of tolerance, party of intolerance, or side of tolerance, side of intolerance. I watched videos this weekend about the Portland book burnings. The far left, the progressives and Antifa activists are burning books. Party of tolerance. They're dumping garbage in the streets and then harassing federal employees who pick it up. Party of tolerance. Sure, whatever. I mean, come on, dude. This is not even a hard one. But his argument is that I will scream that all the polls that agree with him are fake news. But the thing is, the polls don't agree with him. The polls demonstrate intolerance. And for me, this isn't about sides, okay? I was not particularly pro-Republican at one point in my life. I was very anti-Republican because they were trying to have me arrested for not being a Christian, okay? The satanic panic, all right? Now, let's be fair. That was not entirely a Republican thing. There were quite a few progressives and a fair number of liberal psychologists involved in this. It wasn't a party issue the same way. Remember that the worst attorneys general, the ones who are most aggressive about prosecutions, tend to also be Democrat. Okay, so there's a lot of blurring of the lines here, and that's one of the reasons where I just tend to say authoritarians, because, you know, 3/4 of the Republicans are authoritarian leftists. The problem is that 98% of the left, the Democrats, are authoritarian leftists. So I'm going to go with the part where I have that 25% that I can actually work with. Just, you know, that's the way things are right now. So I'm not particularly partisan about this, but I will make the observations, and right now the left isn't tolerant. The left in America has been taken over by progressives who have a history of intolerance. They are elitist. They are functionalist. We have these core tenets of progressivism, and everyone says, "Oh, well, you're going back too far in history. Modern progressives aren't like that." Well, do we have structural racism? Do we have structural racism in this country? Because I agree we do. Okay? If we do, then history matters. The history of what started that, what pushed that, what continues to push that matters. And I'm going to say it right now because I've been in the cities. That's the Democrats. All right? And if you talk to black activists who are not being reported by the news, I know female African American Christians. I'm not Christian, but I know some of these people from the anti-abortion, right to life side of things. Okay, I'm not particularly fond of abortion, various reasons. They really, really don't like that white Democrats push abortion in their neighborhoods. It started off as a eugenics movement, and it continues. They took Margaret Sanger down off the pedestal at the Planned Parenthood headquarters. Okay, they didn't change the policies. Does the history matter? Yeah, the history matters because the history informs your current policies. Okay, government projects are not opportunity. They're not. They're kind of the opposite. Anyway, tolerance. What we're talking about is tolerance, not history. And intolerance is a hallmark right now of the left. I wish it wasn't so because, generally speaking, I'm a huge fan of a lot of people on the left, okay? I do meditation. I do enlightenment stuff. I've been to places of power, and the crystal weenies aren't exactly wrong, okay? There are places of power. Freedom and hope for all mankind. I love all this stuff. And it works. It really does. Just understand that the way of a warrior means that you have to have the sword and the place of power, both. Anyway, it bothers me a lot that so much of the left is intolerant because we need more balance. We need a lot more balance. One of the problems we have right now is that there's this perception, and again, mostly from the left, that balance is not good, that the other side is just pure evil. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people, you can go to Facebook and I can find any number of right-wing people who follow me who think that any liberal viewpoint is horrible and bad and automatically evil, and I disagree. We need bleeding hearts. We need bleeding hearts. We need to have the bleeding hearts actually be bleeding hearts. Then we can apply the realism, compromise, make things work. Right now, the bleeding hearts aren't bleeding hearts. They're stabbing. They're stabbing other people in the heart. That's not a good thing. All right? If you happen to be liberal and listening to this, please, I would love it. Do yourself and me a favor and get back to that bleeding heart. Get back to caring for humanity instead of hating over half of humanity. Stay sideways.